Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. I am Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today on the Listening Mentor Show. We're going to bring up the star of our show momentarily. I just wanted to let you know that you can pick up a copy of this book, Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening, which includes a lot of what we talk about on this show. Why do we do this show? Because Caroline and I really believe there is an opportunity for each and every one of us to find inner peace. And we do that by listening at an elevated level. And the more of us who have inner peace, what would you think about a world peace? World peace and humanity, everyone celebrating each other, our differences, our similarities, instead of all of our judgment. All right, let's welcome the Harley Street stress expert, Caroline HEWARD. Hello.
Hello, happy Friday.
Happy Friday. We call it Friday. Friday.
Absolutely. This is Happy Friday, Friday evening for me.
Yes, it's Friday afternoon here, and we've been back-to-back shows. I feel like I have rollerblades on, but it's all good because it's all been about listening, really. And I know that you listen for a living, and you've listened to me. And you are an excellent listener, a certified therapist, and you also help people to, you know it, bust your stress. Bust your stress. Tell us a little bit more.
Of course. Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. Yes, I help people bust their stress. How do I do that? Well, I work with root cause therapy. So usually we're complaining about a physical, emotional, mental, or behavioral symptom. It might be a relationship issue. It might be something that's going on physically for you, a physical ache and pain, or it might be that you're feeling stressed, anxious, or even depressed. So whatever it is that you're complaining about, some people say they're not stressed, and yet they don't sleep, or they have physical ache and pain, or their relationships are challenging. So if you're one of those people that say, I'm not stressed, but I don't sleep, or you've got some other things going on, that is how your stress is manifesting in your life. And I literally help you bust through your stress by identifying the root cause, which obliterates the symptom from your body and your life. How do I do that? Well, come and find out. I offer a free consultation on Zoom, Skype, Messenger, audio, video, or if you're really shy, you can call me. So you can reach me on nomorestress@live.co.uk or call on +44 if you're international, 0 if you're local, 7523 120 189. And I look forward to helping you bust through your stress.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Caroline. Our topic today is breaking barriers, empowerment through deep listening. And I did my talking heads earlier about empathetic listening. And something I'd really like to have us go through today, because I find this is a challenge. You and I are elevated listeners. You and I practice elevated listening, and not everybody does. And so when you follow all of the guidance that we give, asking permission, setting boundaries, having a clear mind, being fully present, all these things, that doesn't mean that the other person even has any clue about those things. And so what I'm finding more and more of, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, is people just pick up the phone. I had somebody who's an elevated listener literally pick up the phone. I didn't know it was them. I answered it, and they didn't ask for permission to speak. They didn't even say, is this, they just went on and on and on. And I thought, wow, they've got to take the course again. But how do we, as elevated listeners, acclimate with people who are not listening at an elevated level? Do we hand them a book? Do we say, hey, why don't you go over this course? What do we do?
Well, behavior breeds behavior. So if we are setting our own boundaries, then that helps the other person to drop into your boundaries. So for instance, one of the things that I do, if somebody approaches me and says, are you free to talk? I will usually drop a message back, text message, whichever the medium of communication. And I will say, I'm free anytime after 6. But it'd be really helpful if you could let me know when you are going to call so that I can make sure my phone is free for you. And then they come back with, because I've set it up so that they know when to come and call. So I've made sure that I've cleaned up in terms of domesticity. I've eaten, so I'm not like sort of having a meal that I'm having to take a call halfway through. I've done everything that I need to do. So I'm open and ready for that phone call. And so I think it is about, setting your own boundaries. And then if you say you're not free, so if you say I'm not available before 6, then as sure as eggs is eggs, somebody's going to contact you before 6 because they don't kind of read that. So it's better for you to say when you are available rather than when you're not available. And that allows the person a really good opportunity to say, okay, I'm free at this time, and then they'll come in at that time.
I love that. That's a great point. But one of the things that I spoke about earlier on Talking Heads, because this happens, is something happens and we get triggered by something and we become highly emotional. We can no longer think. We can no longer function. It's like whatever this is, that's all we can see is this. And we become panicked. And so anybody we come in contact with, oh, I have to tell you this happened. I don't want they can't even speak properly. And everything else in life takes a back seat. And so I've been encouraging people to stop. Is it really an emergency? If it is an emergency, take action. Is it related to your mental health? Seek help. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. But what if it's just day-to-day types of things?
Well, we all have our own threshold and we're all different because we're all human. So whatever is important to you might not be important to the other person. And it's important to be open about when you're free, when you're not free. And when the person is in that space, sometimes it's just about letting them download because that's what they need to do to clear whatever it is that that's running around in their mind. It's not easy, and sometimes you're not free. And so my suggestion is just not to want to pick up a call. If it is a call, if it's somebody just rushing into your physical space in terms of being there, that can be a little more challenging because then you have to manage what you're doing and what the other person is doing. Certainly, I've had calls come through and I'm in the kitchen cooking. So I generally won't pick up my phone call because I'm cooking. And if I'm eating, I generally won't pick up the call because I want to finish eating and then I will phone them afterwards. So it is about, again, as I was saying earlier, to manage your boundaries. But if somebody just walks in physically, it is a little challenging to do that. And I just feel that maybe their need is greater.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I think that also goes along with empathetic listening. I think where things can get confusing for people is if you personally, professionally are literally doing something that is requiring your full attention, and then someone comes up and they walk into your space and they need your attention, and And I've had debates with people. I just debated this with somebody the other day. They absolutely can listen while they're doing something else. No, you absolutely cannot listen at an elevated level while you're doing something else. And then they'll say, well, this is what you said. Oh, great. You got the first two sentences. Fantastic. So, but that's not a way to operate if you really, truly want to listen deeply, empathetically, compassionately. So, Caroline, as a certified therapist, as someone who practices elevated listening, if you are in your space that you share with someone else and you are doing something that requires your concentration, and that the loved one, the person you're living with, whomever, they come and they interrupt you with what it is that they're doing, you know that what you're doing, let's say you're doing your accounting, you're doing your books, you know that you could easily make a mistake on the numbers if you engage with them. And at the same time, they're not following asking for permission and setting boundaries.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. It really is, because I can't do my accounts and have a conversation. That just doesn't work. And so I tend to do things like that require absolute focus and attention in the middle of the night. Or I know it sounds crazy, or I tend to do it early in the morning. I'll get up early and start doing them. Or I will just literally, and it's about managing our own energy, I will decide to have an admin day. And so I will just focus on admin, and then my vibration is at that stage of not even allowing people to come in, because I'm very good at managing my own energy. And so when I'm in an admin day, very rarely do people come in. And if they do, I just kind of think, oh, right, maybe it was a client consultation day today as well as an admin day. So when I'm very focused and intentional, usually I can manage my own boundaries as well as other people coming in as well.
I really applaud you for the work that you've done. You're constantly bettering yourself through education. And that is so significant because you're not stagnant. You're not saying, okay, I'm okay with the status quo. You continuously put yourself out there. And we know that not everyone does. So what about this as an option? Is this something that people can consider, or is this completely off the table? You're doing your accounts. I call it accounting. You're doing your accounts, and someone's in your space. You're sharing the space with someone. Let's say it's me, and I am traumatized by something that happens on Netflix, one of my series. Caroline, I can't believe it. Did you see what just happened on XYZ show? Oh my gosh, I can't, blah, 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 blah. What do you say?
I listen. I really listen, and I drop everything, because when you listen, and when the person is in that state of trauma, when you literally listen without doing anything else and without any judgment, when they've exhausted everything, it goes silent. And you can attest to that.
Yes, that's very true. But here's where I want us to kind of dive into this a little bit deeper. So you're doing your accounts. Any mistake with the numbers could have significant impact. And I'm traumatized by a daytime series on Netflix with characters who are not even real, right? It's just a story that somebody wrote. So is there a comparison between the fact that I'm upset that they wrote XYZ out of the script and that person's not on the show and I was really identifying with them, and yet here you are doing something that's really significant?
Yeah, well, what happens is TV programs can bring up our own trauma. And so when somebody does feel traumatized by a movie or something that they've watched on TV or Netflix, it can bring up their own personal trauma. And then they just have to say it, they just have to get it out. And so if somebody calls me like that, I'm a bit of a sucker for that. I won't let the call go if they are in that state, because if I listen to them and they say everything they need to say, then they will feel calmer. So I listen with empathy and compassion, because they just have to say it. And I do that quite frequently, where the person at the other end that has been, that's just needed to say everything they've needed to say, as then says, right, I feel better now. And it's because I've been there and absolutely compassionately, listened at an elevated level, and I haven't gone in to say anything or interrupted them unless they say, so what do you think about that then? Do you think I'm right or do you think I'm wrong? And then I will, if I've been invited to, then I will say something. But sometimes people just want to say. And so I'm very cautious about leaping in with a solution, because it might just be that they just want to say what's come up for them. And that's it. And they've got their own internal solutions. They just need to share how they're feeling.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that based on how your perspective and based on your expertise and your experience, you will put aside whatever it is you're doing so that someone can share what they have to share when they want to share it.
I do. And at the same time, I can say that there's been occasions, especially when I'm right up on a deadline, and my mum has called, for instance, and she wants to have a conversation with me and ask me to do something technical and help her out with something technical, which I know is going to take some time. I'll just say, Mum, can't do it now. I'm really in the middle of something. There's no way that I can do it now. I've got to meet this deadline. I'm sorry. As soon as I've done it, and I'm just really specific, direct, and just say, I'm going to help you. I just can't do it now. Let me get this deadline out the way, because otherwise I'm going to lose something. So she knows, and then I'm quite good with my boundaries. My mum will know when I was up at a deadline, in terms of all the contracts being signed and everything, in terms of, selling my property in London and buying this one that I'm in now. I had to get everything done before 5 o'clock. And if she called in the middle of the day, I would just say, I've got to leave the phone free to get all the calls in, because then it's over at 5 o'clock. So, and we're right up against it with getting everything done. And I've certainly been in that position where I've had to say, I'm sorry, I can't speak now, but I will be free all evening after 6. I just need to make sure that I've covered anything if any calls come in. So it is about making sure what my boundaries are and what's important, urgent. And if I'm in an urgent and important deadline, then I will have to be very specific with my boundaries.
And to your point, that is hard. It's difficult, especially if it's with a loved one or someone you know really well. And also, if you're saying, I'm not able to be fully present, or I love what you said before. It's about when can you be present? I can be available at 6 o'clock, at 7 o'clock. And that's not going to sit well with the other person, because you know how they are and they want to get it off their chest right now. And so many times what we'll do is we will just engage and let them say whatever it is they have to say. Now, the whole thing about elevated listening, we can't be angry while we're doing that. If you decide to stop doing your accounts and you're going to take a call, if you start thinking to yourself, oh, I wish he'd never have called. I could be dealing with this later. I have to get this done. Now you're not listening and you're not adding value to the other person as well. But this is what we do, not you and I specifically. This is what we do as people, just to shut him up. I'll let him say what he has to say right now. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, I can't wait till he's done talking. I can't wait till he shuts up, right? But this is what we do.
Well, I have to be very honest here and transparent, that if there's a call that comes through that I know that I can't take because it's going to take some time and it's not urgent and I'm working on an urgent deadline, then I will let the call go, because I want to meet my deadline. And that's being very transparent, because if I have something to do that needs to be done by 5 o'clock and I'm taking a call at 4:30, and I know that call's going to take about an hour or at least 45 minutes, then I'm not going to meet my deadline. And so I'm, and I'm sure a lot of us do this. And then we call and say, sorry, I missed your call. I was in the middle of something. I'm free now. Or I'll drop a text to say, sorry, I wasn't available when you called, but I'm free anytime now. Let me know when is a good time for you to call back. So it is about managing what's right for you, as well as being there for the other person.
Very true. I love how you framed that up. And also, just to add on to that, I think when you see the person calling, of course, a call is different than someone being in your space personally. Even if it's at work, professionally, if somebody's in an office, it's different. So what I also say to myself is I see the name on the phone and I think, okay, this is going to require me to be fully present and engaged. I don't have it right now. I just feel off. So if I were to answer the call, and I could state that, oh, hi, Bob, I saw your name. I wanted to show you the respect of answering the call. This is not a great time, but an hour from now will be a better time. And I've gotten this. Well, why'd you answer the phone?
I'm sorry, that's really funny because I do the same sometimes.
But I just said why I answered the phone, right? I wanted to show you the respect of answering the phone. Well, you shouldn't have answered the phone now because now you answered the phone. So now it seems like you should be available. Well, I'm not available. And now we're wasting time because I told you I don't have the time, which I'm now giving the time, which isn't to the issue that you wanted to discuss. And now I'm running out of time.
I have done that, and it is about being really clear again with your boundaries. But sort of, I can really hear that that situation can happen and can be really challenging. And so I've just said I picked it up because I keep missing your calls, and I really want to reconnect with you. But I'm going to, sort of one of my main excuses is I've got a live show starting in 15 minutes, and I just don't have time right now to speak, but I will be free anytime after 8 o'clock. So we can catch up after then. Just let me know when it's good for you. And they've said, okay. And I think that I've been very direct. If I'm saying I've got a live show in 15 minutes and I have to be there in 5 minutes, but I didn't want to miss you, and I wanted you to know that I'm sorry I keep missing you, then I've been very firm, direct, to the point, saying I'm on this live show. So there's no way that, I can be in a 15-minute or 20-minute phone call because I'm going live. And that seems to work. But yeah, or I'll text if the person has called and I've missed the call. I've dropped a quick message to say, sorry, I've missed your call. I'm just about to go into a live broadcast. So not able to chat now, but I'm free anytime after 8 o'clock. So please feel free to call. Let me know when you're calling so that I can make sure that my phone is available for your call to come through easily.
I love the way that you said that. And I felt safe when you said that. I thought, oh, she really does care. That's a nice way. I know here in the States, I don't even know if it's still a thing, but it was a thing for a long time. If you were to call someone and they didn't answer, the phone could be set up so that it automatically would send you a message in a meeting or busy. And I found that to be annoying because it wasn't custom to me. It's a generic message that could be sent to anyone. And I thought, you just want to shut me up. That's why you're sending the message. You're probably on the beach or something. So we start thinking about certain things so I'm not really sure when it comes to deep listening. Okay, that's what our topic is now, is the deep listening. We're not able to do it all the time. And I think that some people, and I'm not judging, I'm just saying some people are more talkative than other people. Some people are better listeners than other people. So when you get people together who are extremes, then it's a challenge because you as a great listener could be taken advantage of by having somebody who's there all the time, knowing that you're going to be dropping everything to listen to them. And that could cause resentment and animosity.
Well, usually, especially if I've been on a call for an hour or 45 minutes and it's going on to an hour, I'll just say I'll actually relate to that and say, do you realize we've been in this call for 45 minutes? And the other person say, no, God, that's gone really quickly, and I'll just say, just to let you know. And that's because they're so relaxed, time goes quick, and they're so relaxed in the call that they don't actually appreciate that the time, that much time has gone. So I do have attention on the time because it's my time as well as theirs. And so it's important to me that I manage that time, because otherwise it could be an hour and a half or 2 hours before they're actually aware of what time it is. So I do make reference to it so that the other person is aware, just in case they're so relaxed that they've missed something that they should be doing as well.
Yes. And I think when you say that, do you realize it's 45 minutes? We have that a lot on our TV shows here. The time goes by so fast. Like, do you realize that we're 50 minutes? It's a 40-minute show, because it is so engaging. But when it's a conversation and you're in the role of a therapist, for example, that's a different story, because I remember having gone to therapists in person over the years, marriage counselors, whatever. They would be spot on 5 minutes before it's supposed to end. You'd see closing up of the book, maybe putting down of the pen. And I know they're no longer listening because it's that 5-minute window. So I would say, listen, you really aren't giving me a 50-minute session. It's a 45-minute session. No, I'm still here, but you're not here for those last 5 minutes because you're looking for a way to tie everything up nicely so I can leave and the next person can come in. And that's a hard thing to do.
I've still got to learn to do that. In fact, when I was in training last weekend, the last weekend that I was doing my coaching training, I got so lost in the exchange that I was therapist and the other person was client in our assessment trainings, and I went right the way through, a lot of lunch and. It was the end of the day, and I got back, and the tutor said, "Oh, Caroline, you're back." I just said, "Why didn't you tell me?" And then the next time that we had to do a session in client, sort of client therapist, he actually came up to me and he said, "Right on time, Caroline. How did you do it?" I says, "Well, I've got no phone, no watch." I says, "But I'm, being cautious now that I don't over engage." He says, "Well, this is something you've got to learn to manage your time, because it's only 1 hour slots that you're giving, whereas I give a lot more than that normally. But I'm learning a different way to be much more focused and much more business-like, so that I can manage a better calendar and a diary during the day."
I appreciate you sharing that, because there's a lot of professional people out there who work with clients, and it is a tough one. I know I had a client, a coaching client, who's going through a very hard time, and knowing that sometimes and we do this, right? We just let the person speak and not say anything. It was literally 40 minutes. I had said nothing except for setting the framing up how the session was going to go, and it wasn't the first session, and what the person hoped to take away from it. And of course, after 40 minutes, the person was getting tired of talking and they're finally starting to slow down. But where I'm going with this is that they were still worked up about this issue, and I had concerns for their safety. And that's a tough place to be, because that in the next 15 minutes, somebody else needs you as well, and their concerns are legitimate as well. So how do you close up a session when you know that someone has these mental health issues, and you're listening as deeply as you can, but you still are a business person? What do you do so that you can close it out so that the person feels heard, and at the same time you have to be able to move on to the next client?
Well, I mentioned time, so I say, we've been here for an hour and 15 minutes, and the session is an hour and a half. So we just need to be wrapping up. I just wanted to give you an understanding of what time we have left, so we can look at one more aspect during this last 10 minutes before we wrap up and move forward to booking the next session. So it is about me managing it, and I'm getting much better than what I used to be, certainly with my new trainer, John, who's being very mindful of the fact that I'm very much a giver. And that is detrimental to me because I'm overly giving and overly allowing, giving more time and more to a person. And so he said, if I manage my time better by managing and letting the client know, because the client doesn't know, they're not keeping an eye on time, which is why I have a little clock next to me now. This little clock that I have is right here. And I have a clock to make sure that I am aware of time, because I'm not usually.
I think that's a great way to frame up the session. And, I do that here as well. When we have somebody new on the platform, I'll say, our show today is 40 minutes and we're going to be spotlighting you. When you're on Spotlight, please keep the conversation, keep your comments to 2 minutes. And no, 10 minutes later, you're still going on. And it's a tough one because we practice elevated listening here. And if I interrupt the person or bring them back, I'm not listening at an elevated level. And at the same time, I'm producing a television show.
Yeah, it is a tough one. and it's I would suggest that you recommend everyone has a little clock next to them, and recommend that they are in awareness of the fact that sort of the time is scheduled in the show, because the more relaxed someone becomes, the less time focused that anyone becomes. And it's a bit like, I liken it to when you go out for a nice meal with friends, and you've been in a really nice, lovely sensory experience. Conversation is flowing. You're having a good time, and then you don't notice time. And then it's much later than you thought it was. I've done that frequently when I was in London, especially on a Sunday when the tubes were running at an earlier time. So the last tubes would be running earlier. And I frequently miss the last tubes because I've been in this deep and meaningful conversation with someone. And they've even put the chairs up on the tables, and I've not even noticed, and then suddenly I've missed the last tube. So I'm having to get a night bus home from the town, the West End. And it's really, really annoyed me. And so I do my best to be focused on time. And instead of me, because I don't wear a watch and I'm not always picking up my mobile to have a look at the time, I will say, any idea of the time? Because it feels like we've been here for a while and I want to make sure I get my last tube. So it is about managing that experience. But when we're in a sensory experience, then time goes quickly when we're enjoying ourselves. And so that's what I liken it to. And usually time goes very quick with people that are with me in conversation, over dinner, or even on Messenger or in a call.
I didn't know that you didn't wear a watch. That's really interesting. And I typically have on 2 watches. One is a fashion, is a fashion statement. And the other one is this Apple Watch, not a paid spokesperson, because it gives me so much information about my body, about my exercise, about my sleep. And the interesting thing I think is, when we're broadcasting, I have to be very mindful of the time, especially with our new partnership with E360 TV. And as the host of the Woman's Prerogative, the part 2, you now have that responsibility of making sure that this show closes out at the right time. That it is difficult because it's not just about you. There are other people who are wanting to say something, and there's sponsorships, etc. But when I'm not broadcasting, I'm not actually focused on the time. Even though I have the watches on, I'm not paying attention to the time. But because it's part of my job, my work, I have to be.
Well, that's why I have a clock, and in terms of the shows and when I'm with clients, because it keeps me focused. I can't wear a watch; they don't work on me. And even when I was very young, the wind-up watches, because I'm that old, I had a wind-up watch, and they never worked. And I had a battery watch, and they didn't work either. They either went fast, slow, or stopped, or just didn't work. And so I just gave up, and I stopped wearing watches. And I have lots of very pretty watches. My mum has constantly bought me very nice watches, like bracelet type watches, sort of like a piece of jewelry. And I've worn them and I just thought, oh, stuff it. They just don't work on me. So now I use the mobile, I just, pull it out and check the time that way. But, I'm not au fait with wearing a watch, and I've not worn a watch for many years now, probably a few decades at least, maybe 3 decades.
That's got to be really liberating to not have to be tied up by time, so to speak.
Oh yeah, I just, I'll set my alarm when I need to get up, but actually I wake up because it's time, and that was something that I learned in a training, rather than having an alarm, why don't you try just waking up when allowing yourself to wake up when you need to. And I'm doing it, and I'm waking up early when I need to wake up early. And sometimes I feel a little bit, well, if I don't get up, I'm going to miss that engineer, or I'm going to miss that deadline, and I'll put the alarm, but I'm already awake before the alarm's gone off. So it's a very good, because the body is conscious, and it will wake up when it needs to.
Absolutely. I shouldn't say I don't set alarm. I do set an alarm, but I'm usually up before the alarm goes off, and I sleep really well, which is amazing considering everything going on. But so we're coming to the end of the show, and I'd love for us to give our audience something to take away in terms of how can you break barriers and be empowered by listening deeply. So that's a lot in there. So if we just break it down to what is deep listening, what's one thing we can do to listen deeply?
To move into your heart. If you drop into your heart rather than thinking about what to say, if you breathe down into your heart and respond from your heart. In this show, I don't have a script. I have no idea what amazing and beautiful Dr. Jacalyn is going to ask me. And I'm here responding as you're hearing. I'm not checking anything. I'm not looking at anything. And I'm responding directly from my heart, from what I feel and what I know, rather than having to work something out through my mind. And so when you drop into your heart, that will stop the clutter and the conversation of the mind, and that will make you communicate and connect at that much deeper level, that heart-based level. And when you connect from the heart, you connect from a place of compassion, from empathy, rather than having to work out and think what to say. I do wonder sometimes if I'm going to trip up and not have anything to say. It hasn't happened yet, Dr. Jacalyn.
Caroline, brilliant. That's great information that you just shared. And I really so enjoyed doing this program with you. Before we close out, I'd love for you to share a little bit about the other shows that you do. And you're also going to be a co-host for World Jenny's Day. So tell us about A Woman's Prerogative, Talking Heads, and then anything you want to say about being involved with a charity event.
Wow, there's a lot then, isn't there? I've been on A Woman's Prerogative. It's every Monday at 5 p.m. UK time. And I think that's midday Eastern time. For a number of months now. I think it's probably been since the beginning of the year, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Jacalyn. And that is a panel of amazing ladies, and we all share our perspectives. Dr. Jacalyn comes up with amazing topics of conversation. And there's a lot that we all share from a personal perspective. And there's very different perspectives because we're coming from different countries, different ethics, different types of work. And so it's always worth tuning in to A Woman's Prerogative. And very recently, I've been hosting the midnight show from the UK. And even though I was fairly nervous about hosting it, I'm actually really enjoying it, and I feel so high and energized after that show. I'm usually still awake for a good few hours and doing other things before I feel tired to go to bed. That has been an extraordinary adventure for me in terms of being liberated to being able to host a show where I never thought I'd have the skills to do that. So I'm really appreciative of the fact that the wonderful Dr. Jacalyn is giving that opportunity to me and being able to deliver a good show, and I'm getting better on timing too. I also do Talking Heads on Tuesday at 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern time. And that is my own show in terms of I open it and I close it. So I host the entire show as a Talking Heads presenter. And I look at all manner of symptoms, stress, all sorts of topics around stress, anxiety, depression, relationships. And those shows are really, really insightful in terms of raising awareness and giving you help, free insights and help. And I'm also co-hosting a couple of hours on World Jenny's Day. World Jenny's Day is celebrating World Mental Health Day, 10/10, and it also is the anniversary for Janetta Barry's daughter who took her own life. And I feel very privileged to be able to co-host on that day, because I'm not actually a singer or a composer, or I can't really do anything that's glamorously, sort of creative in that way. And I did want to participate last year, I just didn't know how. So having the opportunity to co-host is something that I can do, and something that I feel very privileged to be able to offer and be part of this amazing adventure and this amazing fundraising and opportunity to help people that have mental health issues. So that's me in a nutshell. So far, so good.
Thank you, Caroline. And how can people reach out to you and take advantage of that 30-minute Zoom stress buster consultation?
You can reach me on nomorestress at live.co.uk. So reach out with an email, telling me what the issue is, and then we can schedule some time. Or you can call me if you're international, +44. If you're local, 07523 120 189. And I look forward to helping you bust your stress.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Caroline. Another fabulous episode. We are going to sign off for now. Our next show is coming up. It's Coexistence and Sustainability with Pet Psychic Amina. And today we're going to talk about the perils of feeding wildlife, what we need to know. All right. Thank you so much. We will be back shortly. And Caroline, we'll see you on Monday.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been great. Happy Friday.
Happy
Bye-bye.
Friday. Bye.